The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the overhead lights. Magnus sat at his desk, staring at the screen of his laptop. The glow illuminated his face, casting shadows across the room. He had just finished analyzing a complex endgame, his mind still buzzing with variations and possibilities. But something felt off. A strange tension lingered in the air, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Then, the email arrived. It was an unassuming subject line. An offer you can't refuse. Magnus frowned. He received countless emails every day, sponsorship deals, interview requests, fan mail, but this one felt different. He clicked it open. The message was brief, written in a crisp, formal tone.
Dear Magnus, you are invited to a game of chess. Your opponent, Fischer. Time, tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Location, the Hall of Champions, Reykjavik. Do not speak of this to anyone. Come alone.
Magnus blinked, rereading the name. Fischer? The legendary Fischer? The man who had vanished from the chess world decades ago, leaving behind a legacy of brilliance and mystery? It had to be a joke. Fischer had passed away years ago, hadn't he? But the email was signed with a single, unmistakable symbol. Magnus leaned back in his chair, his heart pounding. He had grown up studying Fischer's games, marveling at the American's precision and aggression. Fischer was a legend, a ghost who haunted the annals of chess history, and now he was being invited to play him. He glanced at the clock. It was late, but sleep was out of the question. He grabbed his coat and headed out into the cold Norwegian night, his mind racing. The next morning, Magnus stood outside the Hall of Champions in Reykjavik. The building was a relic of the past, its stone facade weathered by time. It was here, in 1972, that Fischer had defeated Boris Spassky in the match of the century, a clash that transcended chess and became a symbol of the Cold War. The doors creaked open as Magnus stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and dust. The hall was empty, save for a single chessboard set up in the center of the room. The pieces were arranged, waiting, and then he appeared. Bobby Fischer emerged from the shadows, his presence commanding the room. He looked exactly as he had in his prime, sharp, intense, and radiating an almost otherworldly focus. His piercing blue eyes locked onto Magnus, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still.
You came,
Fischer said, his voice low and steady.
I wasn't sure you would.
Magnus swallowed hard, his throat dry.
How is this possible?
Fischer smirked, a flicker of amusement in his eyes.
Chess is timeless, Magnus. So are its champions.
He gestured to the board.
Shall we?
Magnus took his seat, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted the pieces. Fischer sat across from him, his gaze never wavering. The clock was set, the pieces ready. The first move was Magnus's. He reached for his king's pawn, hesitating for a moment before pushing it forward. e4. Fischer's response was immediate. e5. The game had begun. The room faded away as the two legends locked into battle. Each move was a statement, a declaration of intent. Fischer's play was sharp and aggressive, his pieces leaping across the board with purpose. Magnus countered with his trademark precision, his mind calculating dozens of variations at once. The tension was palpable, the silence broken only by the ticking of the clock and the soft clink of pieces being moved. Neither player spoke, their focus entirely on the game. But beneath the surface, something deeper was at play. A clash of eras, of philosophies, of two minds that had reshaped the game of chess. As the game progressed, Magnus began to notice something strange. Fischer's moves were familiar, too familiar. It was as if he had seen them before, in his own games, in his own analyses. But how? The realization hit him like a thunderbolt. Fischer wasn't just playing him, he was playing as him. Every move, every strategy was a mirror of Magnus's own style, refined and perfected. Magnus felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just a game, it was a test, a challenge to prove himself against the greatest player of all time and against his own legacy. The clock ticked down, the pieces danced, and somewhere in the shadows, the ghost of chess history watched, waiting to see who would emerge victorious.